Hey, this is Scott Hambrick. This is Scott Stream. You can find me at scotthambrick.com if you care. Earlier this week, I met the consummate boomer. He was a friend of some close friends of ours from Texas, claimed he was conservative. This was so interesting to me because I don't hang out with just all the people, and I hadn't encountered somebody like this in quite some time. I knew they existed, but I hadn't been around him in a while. He was in his mid-60s, married, a couple of children, lives in a home on a golf course, had made his way through life with a career in banking, had sat on a school board for around 20 years, and by all measures, what we would call a quote-unquote successful person. And he was, of course, intrigued by me and me by him. And in our discussion, it came. He's from Texas, and he claims he's conservative. And he said, while he was on the school board of a public school down there for 20 years, 19 years, one of their big fears was how they might deal with some tranny dude wanting to play girls soccer, for example. They're really worried about the safety of these girls. Some guy that was bathed in testosterone in the womb and was actually, physiologically a male, was in a contact sport with girls. And I said, "Oh, interesting. So did that happen while you were on the board?" He said, "No, it did not." And I said, "Well, did you guys have planning sessions and come up with a strategy to deal with that if it did come up?" And he said, "Oh, yes, we did." And I said, "Well, what was the strategy? What did you guys decide you were going to do?" Now, this guy says he's conservative, okay? He said, "Well, we were just gonna fight it out in the courts." And I said, "That's a terrible fucking idea." And he said, "Oh, well, why is that?" And I said, "Well, there's a less than coin flip chance that you win that. Like, we've seen what the courts are doing." He says, "Oh, but this is Texas." And I'm like, these Texans are delusional as to how right wing or how conservative their state is. In fact, this guy says he's conservative, but he's not. He's not actually willing to fight for anything. He's like, "Oh, well, we're going to go to the courts and leave it to some judge that was educated in our university system and had been selected by the broken process to preside over these questions. We're going to leave it up to that person to figure out if Steve can save Stacy and they can body check your daughter and break her fucking leg in a soccer match." And he said, "Oh, well, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, it's not my job, so I haven't thought about it a great deal, but I would probably do something like completely shut down all sports at that school, have a press conference and send a letter out to all the parents that said, we've been faced with the problem of having a male who wants to play sports against your daughters. Because of the current political climate, we have reason to believe that if we oppose this, we'll end up in courts because we want to preserve what meager budget we have for education and not fighting court battles in order to avoid that expense. We're just shutting all of the sports programs down. I'm sorry about this." The end. And he says, "Oh, but what about the students who are working for athletic scholarships and so on?" I'm like, "Well, that's perfect because now they'll know. Now they'll know, and they'll be mad at him. They'd be mad at the school board. They'd be mad at the president of the school board. But who else they'd be mad at? That tranny. That's very important. There'd be far more people angry at the person that had caused the disruption than would have been angry if they had let the tranny play soccer against the girls' soccer team. And I don't know that that's the best strategy. He put me on the spot, but I'll tell you what, it's a better strategy than what he had. There's a good chance that under my strategy, it would end up in the courts. That's okay. We were going to the court anyway, but now we've at least brought some social pressure to bear from the community on the people that caused this, that were attacking the norm. Again, I don't know if that's the best strategy, but it's better than his. If you're going to end up in court because you're controlling the situation, right? We've got to find better ways to fight. We've got to find better ways to fight. Playing within the system and being the establishment and just declaring that person's going to have to sue to change the establishment. No, use the power of the establishment to prevent those people from having what they want. That person is going to ultimately, because I believe the slippery slope does exist, I don't think it's a fallacy, that person is eventually going to destroy the institution anyway. So it's better to put the institution on a hiatus by closing the program down than to let that person subvert it and destroy it in his or her way. Again, I don't know if that's the best way to fight in that particular instance, but we've got to be far more strategic and far more careful with our tactics and not just go by the playbook. Don't just, if you're on a school board, don't just call the school attorney and ask what's available. Because he doesn't know, she doesn't know. They're going to say, oh, well, we'll just have to fight it out in the courts. Expel that person, right? Expel them. Put something in the student handbook that prevents them from dressing outside of the norm. Put a harsh, difficult to deal with dress code in. Use the power. Use the power to control the situation. Use the power when you can to create social ostracism for these people. Use the power. Stop being on the defensive. So this guy says he's a conservative. Whatever the hell that means, I don't even know what the word means. But he was not faced with the problem. And as a result, he wasn't shown that his strategy wasn't going to work, but I assure you it wasn't. Here's another boomer story. There was a hurricane that disrupted cell phone service in this guy's community. And he called the cell phone company and says, hey, listen, I'm the president of the school board. I got to help make decisions about the school. I work for this bank. I've got so many hundreds of employees. You've got to get my cell phone turned on right now. And of course, the cell phones being a network and an over-the-air, radio, essentially, they can't just turn on one cell phone. If all the towers are completely blown over, they can't just turn on the school board president's cell phone. Well, needless to say, they couldn't help him, and they said, well, I'll tell you what, we can give you like $20 off your next bill, but I'm sorry for the inconvenience. We're working as fast as we can to get the network back up. And he said, I wrote them a letter that I could not read in polite company, a harshly worded letter. It's just peak boomer to not to pull the don't you know who I am, turn the cell phone towers back on for me, period. Just for, it's just peak boomer. The unreality that would cause the guy to think that they could fix his cell phone ahead of somebody else's. It's a network, bro. You can't do that. And then also that, I understand the system. I understand how this all works. When the trouble comes, we're gonna hire the best attorneys, and we're gonna use the system in a defensive manner, and we're gonna win. It's not how that works, guys. We've got to use our power. We have to understand, and we have to understand that the system doesn't work for you. If you need your cell phone turned on and the towers blew it down, the system's not going to work. If If it's not a hurricane, but it's a tranny attack on sports, going to the system's not going to work. The courts are, in fact, a social network of people that were educated years ago in a set of institutions that are probably not friendly to you. They are subject to enormous social pressures, and they are probably not going to rule in your favor or my favor. It's a fact. We can see it. So if you find yourself in a position to make decisions and to wield some sort of power, please go on the offensive. Would you? Can we get off of our heels and stop getting our asses kicked, please? If there's somebody in your organization who's a social justice advocate, do like Basecamp did. Go look into the Basecamp situation. They issued a decree that said that the purpose of Basecamp was to create software and to deliver a service to clients. And anybody trying to do anything other than that would be let go. They put an end to a number of committees, and it ultimately led to the termination, or at least I don't think it was actually termination. I think about a third of their workforce quit, because Basecamp declared that they would not allow their social justice activism within the organization. Perfect. I guarantee you that with a third of their workforce gone, they will get more work done. Go on the offensive, guys. Make those declarations. Institute those policies that prevent these people from acting. Discriminate against them. Don't bring that shit around here. We use your power properly, please. If you have a client that advocates for this, don't take their money. Fire them. Say, hey, this just isn't working out for us. You need to pursue the market elsewhere. Best of luck to you in the future. Let them go. Let them go.